Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello guys, we are from group 11 and today we want to present our material about the joy of insurrection. And before that, let me us introduce ourselves. Our group is consist by four. The first is Fadli Rifki Ramadan, second is me Muhammad Taufik, next is Garda Muhammad, and next is Raditya Arifansyah. Well, without any further ado, let's get to the material. The first is Insurrection and Revolution. As stated by Newman, 2017, Stirner and Agamben are two thinkers not often considered together. Their thinking emerged within and respond to different philosophical traditions. 19th century Hegelianism and humanism in case of the former, and 20th century Heideggerian philosophy and contemporary currents of post-Althusserian, post-Foucauldian thought in the latter. Moreover, while their thinking might be characterized as anarchistic, in the sense both oppose the sovereignty of the state, C. Bargu 2011, the relationship to the anarchistic tradition is ambiguous. One of the few occasions that Agamben refers to the Stirner directly. It is in relation to his notion of the insurrection. Agamben sees Stirner's insurrection as a destituting line of flight from the state, a form of personal, ethnical, anarchic revolt, and an egoistic act of subtraction that present a serious challenge to Marx's revolutionary politics based on the collective class subject. Next, please. Revolution and insurrection must not be looked upon as synonymous. The former consists in overturning of conditions of the established condition or status, the state or society, and its according political or social act. The latter has indeed for its unavoidable consequences a transformation of circumstances, yet doesn't start from it but from man's discontent with themselves. It's not an arm rising but a rising of individuals getting up without regard to the arrangement that spring from it. The revolution aimed at new arrangement. Insurrection lead us no longer to let ourselves be arranged, but to arrange ourselves, and sets no glittering hopes on institution. Where the revolution works to transform external social and political condition and institution, the insurrection is aimed at one's own self-transformation. It starts from man's discontent with themselves. It involves placing oneself above external conditions and constraints, whereupon these constraints simply disintegrate. It starts from the affirmation of the self, and the political consequence flow from this. Next. And there is a Leninism and insurrection. As stated by Wallstein 1990s, Lenin's strategy could succeed only in semi-peripheral country. Therefore, retrospectively, it is not at all surprising that the first socialist revolution occurred in Russia. It was probably the only place in which it was truly possible in that epoch. This was clear for three main reasons. One, such an insurrection was not possible within core zones of the capitalist world economic, and the working class had too many options that seemed more attractive to them in the short run without their taking the enormous risk of insurrectionary activity. This has become clear beyond doubt in the years since 1917. It may not have seemed so obvious then. The secondly is we have come to understand that the mobilization of mass support for an insurrectionary movement is not likely on the basis of class appeals exclusively. There must be added to the class appeals a strong dose of nationalist sentiment, what subsequently we have called anti-imperialism. But in the core zones, a sense of nationalist achievement was foremost of the countries behind. And finally, a successful insurrection requires some significant sector of urban human infrastructure, a working class, and an intelligentsia of some size and consciousness. Most peripheral zones did not have this in 1917, but Russia did. Thus, Marxism and Leninism emerged as the efficacious ideology for anti-systematic activity in the semi-periphery in the beginning of the 20th century, as its subsequent history has demonstrated. And the example of insurrection, the first is there is democratic insurrection. According to Murray 2010, democratic insurrection is a Tremont fence, a collective farm, an Occupy university. It is indigenous communities struggling for autonomy in the jungles of Chiapas. It is a group of friends linked arms with PVC pipes that read climate justice now. It is global networks for communities joining in simultaneous resistance to domination. The democratic insurrection is resistant to democratic capitalist state, which have emptied democratic of meaning and replaced it with a palatable imperialism, an accepted aristocracy, and passive dependence. Seeking to overcome this perversion through a project of constructive resistance, democratic insurrection is a struggle for humanity and against neoliberalism. And next example is armed insurrection. According to Newberg 1970, armed insurrection as one of the forms taken by the class struggle of the proletariat is central to the system of Marx and Engels. The utilization of this form by the proletariat at a determinate historical stage in the evolution of the class struggle in any given country is an absolute and inexorable necessity. This necessity derives immediately from the entire Marxist conception of the development of society, of the revolutionary role of violence in history, of the role of the state, and the instrument of a single class domination, and finally of the dictatorship of the proletariat, denial of the inexorable necessity for armed insurrection, or more generally, for armed struggle against the ruling classes on the part of the proletariat, means automatically the denial of the class struggle as a whole. It means denial of the very foundation of revolutionary Marxism and its reduction to an odious doctrine of non-resistance. Well, the next material will be delivered by Fadli. Fadli, the mic is yours.
Okay, let me begin. Karl Marx theory. Marxist theory explains that social theory about human life in the world. Marxist theories tend to focus their interpretation and considering how literary texts depict class oppression, strife, and social inequality to serve critic elements of capitalistic Western life. Marxist theory also consider how literary texts suffered, even overturn ordinary form of social and political order, then it will present new form of social and political perception and interaction. According to Susano, Marxism is the term for ideology about the relation between economic, social, and political concept. And class struggle. In the Marxist perspective, society was divided into two classes, the bourgeois and the proletariat, the oppressing class and the oppressed class. Class struggle focused on the struggle of the oppressed class against the oppressor. It focused on the way the class oppressed faced the oppressor. The reason behind this class of struggle is economic, because economic can determine the society class of level, such as the end and the proletariat. The oppressed that make the proletariat struggle is they work for the elite, but it makes them exploit. Class of struggle is the active expression of the theoretical class of conflict that is looked from any socialist perspective. And then revolution. The result of class struggle is revolution. Revolution is an indication to the society to survive from crisis, permanasari. Social revolution is the rapid and fundamental change of society and class structure of a country. In the other word, according to Thaddeus Stockpole, social revolution coupled with the rebellion of the lower classes or the oppressed class. The lower class or proletariat changed the social structure from old into the new one. By the revolution that is made by the lower classes sweep the class stratification to stop discrimination, exploration, then make a new society for a better life. And then rebellion. Karl Marx stated that rebellion movement occurs because there is a pressure towards the proletariat from the capitalists who usurp and monopolize the advantages from the society with the power that they are carrying on. The rebellion can occur when the cultural and the legitimate means are rejected. Individuals create their own goals by protest or do rebellion. The act of rebellion is not just refusing. It demands the placement of morality even to life itself. It becomes a struggle to make a change. The rebel identifies with good or bad and suffering because a dominant force. Therefore, the act of rebelling demonstrates a willingness to sacrifice life itself. For common good important than one's destiny. Rebellion is violent action organized by a group of people who are trying to change the political system in their country. Jeremy M. Weinstein, Inside Rebellion, The Politics of Insurgent Violence. Those who participate in rebellions, especially if they are armed, are known as rebel. An armed but limited rebellion is an insurrection, and if the established government doesn't recognize the rebels as belligerents, then they are insurgent, and the revolt is an insurgency. In a larger conflict, the rebels may be recognized as belligerents without their government being recognized by the established government, in which case the conflict becomes a civil war. Jeremy M. Weinstein, Inside Rebellion, The Politics of Insurgent Violence. True rebellion is rarely considered cool at the time. That's the point. Opposing a dominant cultural norm or social issue should, by its very nature, be divisive and controversial. Because standing up against the status quo is hard, is alienating, and it takes commitment and sacrifice. Only in the off chance that all that sacrifice pays off is the stem of cult administered anachronistically. For people who really rebel are never lauded or praised at the time they act, but mostly criticized, oppressed, and discredited in the public's eyes. Okay, and the next material will be delivered by Garda. Garda, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Fadli. Feminists as joyful insurrections. Rossi Bradiotti, 2012 said, "Feminism is the joyful affirmations of powerful alternatives. Feminism is joyful insurrections." In his examinations of Benedict de Spinoza's theories of the effects, Gilles Deleuze discussed the intertwined nature of the passions and the actions in connections to the relationary of bodies. When we encounter a body that agrees with our nature, one whose relation compounds with ours, we may say that its power is added to ours. The passions that affect us are those of joy, and our power of acting is increased or in change. Potential of joyful insurrections as vehicles for feminist interventions was make me interested for a discussion. Simultaneously, this joyful dissent can perhaps paradoxically be aligned to the figure of the feminist killjoy. Critical rhetorical Sarah Ahmed explains how the feminist killjoy spoils the happiness of others because she refuses to convince, to assemble, or to meet up over happiness. In the thick sociality of everyday spaces, feminists are thus attributed as the origin of bad feeling, as the one who ruin the atmosphere, which is how the atmosphere might be imagined. As shared nextly, as that the act of being a happiness killjoy means becoming an obstacle or an interruption to episode of sexist exchange, racial discriminations, and compulsory heteronormativity. These moments disrupt the systems momentarily, thus becoming instances of dissent and disorientations. You are not following the right path. You are breaking the flow. I here propose to consider these moments of dissent precisely as moments of joyful insurrections. By being a killjoy, you are actually enacting and enabling the possibility of a form of joyful insurrections to emerge. Sarah Ahmed, 2010, concedes there can be joy in killing joy. Next. Spinoza, joyful effects. In the third part of the Ethics of the origin and nature of the effects, Spinoza discusses joy as one of the primary effects, that passions by which the mind passes to a greater perfection. This effect of joy, which in Spinoza is always related to mind and body at once, is connected to pleasure or cheerfulness. However, these are only species of joy as they are chiefly related to the body. What interests me here is in terms of the political dimensions of the effect of joy in Spinoza connections between passions and actions. Joy and sadness are passions by which each one's power is increased or diminished, aid or restrained. As Deleuze explains, this power of acting through joy is what opens the capacity for being affected to the greatest number of things. Next. Conducting joyful dissents. In the lectures delivered at the Collège de France in 1977 and 1978 on security, territory, populations, Foucault discusses the object of power and governmentality in terms of the conduct of human beings. moving between the borders of the ethical and the political conduct stands on the one hand as an act of directing others according to different mechanisms of coercions, as Foucault argued. The exercise of power consists then in conducting conduct. These modes of political and ethical joy resist the alleged privilege post-feminist joyful liberation that is sustained precisely by the erasure of earlier feminism. Posing a critique of discourse around the concept of happiness as being co-opted to reinforce sexist oppressions, Ahmed convincingly explains how happiness has thus been functioning as a trap that, far from freeing women, traps them into multiple forms of exploitations within an increasingly capitalist system. Next. When thinking about the implications of being joyful during academic works, one of the first dangers that come to mind is how to do so without submitting to the compliance of the corporate neoliberal university that demands happy laborers. In my view, these pernicious forms of affective labors are radically different from what Bradiotti has in mind with her praise feminism is joyful insurrections. This affirmative mode of joy, which is always embodied and relational, involves mode of political and ethical counterconduct. Foucault, 2009. Foucault explained how in order to become other than what we are requires an ethics and politics of encounter conduct, understood as the moment when articulating sustainable mode of joyful insurrections or counterconduct would therefore imply that initially dispersed affective force intensities and relations can productively relate to form new modes of resistance and interventions. Next. Joyful diffractions, Casey Adams Perceptions, 2014. Prioritizing the ethical, material, feminist theories such as Stacey Alaimo and Susan Heckman stress the need to rethink the interactions or interactions between cultures, history, discourse, technology, biology, and the environment, without privileging any one of these elements. Political coalitions and alliance, feminist philosopher and physicist Karen Barrett propose a material ethics that draws and expands Donna Haraway's pioneering work on diffractions, understood as a mapping of interference, not on replications, reflections, or reproductions. Next. As a case study of what I call joyful dissonance, I propose to consider the photography of Winnipeg-based visual artist Casey Adams, working within Aboriginal new media art traditions and building on Donna Haraway's feminist theories. Casey Adams' work, as illustrated in photo series and installations such as Cyborg Hybrids and Cyborg Living Space, investigates the dynamics relations between nature and technology, while simultaneously challenging stereotype representations of indigeneity in a genre dominated by a colonialist, patriarchal hegemony. Then the model were asked to think about a family member or a happy moment in their life and write their own self-identifying title. Their next set of responses was then portrayed in the second photograph. The common denominator are the expressions of seriousness and anger in the image on the left, and the expressions of the cheerfulness and happiness in the photo on the right. One without the other cannot exist. Both affective responses are entangled, giving way to a mode of joyful diffractions. Next. So next material will be delivered by Radit. Radit, time is yours.
Okay. Now, what symbol is this? This is a symbol of anarchism. Next slide. Okay, when we talk about insurrection, it feels incomplete if you don't talk about the ideology of anarchism. Anarchism is a political philosophy and a movement that casts doubt on concepts like authority, as well as manifestation of coercive, involuntary hierarchy are rejected. And anarchism advocates abolishing the dictatorship, which it regards as undesirable, wasteful, and harmful. Okay, next slide. Daniel Guerin wrote that anarchism is really a synonym for socialism. The anarchist is primarily a socialist whose aim is to abolish the exploitation of man by man. And anarchism is only one of the stream of socialist thought. The stream whose main components are concern for liberty and haste to abolish the state. Next slide. Okay, in essence, anarchy is good for a society, even if most of society is against of what these movements are doing. For example, the effort to restore the freedom that repressed by the government. And during the prehistoric era of mankind, an established authority did not exist. It was after the creation of towns and cities that institution of authority. Authority were established and anarchistic ideas espoused as a reaction. Okay, next slide. Anarchy focus on hostility to bourgeois democracy, the critique to authoritarian socialism, and the secession from the state of repressive power. Okay, next. Okay, anarchism through art. The connection between anarchism and art was quite profound during the classical era of anarchism, especially among artistic currents that were developing during the era that such as futurists, surrealists, and the others. And in literature, anarchism was mostly associated with the new apocalyptic and the new romanticism movement. In music, anarchism has been associated with music scenes such as punk, and anarchists such as Leo Tolstoy and Herbert Reed argued that the border between the artist and the non-artist, what separates art from daily act, is a construct produced by the alienation caused by capitalism, and it prevents humans from living a joyful life. No, still on that. The three overlapping properties made art useful to anarchists. It could depict a critique of existing society and hierarchies, serve as prefigurative tool to reflect the anarchist ideal society, even turn on means of direct action such as in protest, as it appeals both emotion and reason. Art could appeal the whole human and have a powerful effect. Okay, next. Okay, this is the culture that has an anarchic value. For example, the do-it-yourself ethic or DIY. The DIY is the method of building, modifying, or repairing things by themselves without the direct aid of expert or professional. The DIY ethic promotes the idea that anyone is capable of performing a variety tasks rather than relying on paid specialists. This is related to anti-consumerism practice. And the next one is radical cheerleading. Radical cheerleading combines elements of peaceful or non-violent direct action with theatrical elements, including in costuming, spectacle, and choreographed dance. Radical cheerleading developed as a subculture apart from cheerleading, because the popular view of cheerleader was highly gendered and highly sexualized. This satirical practice of radical cheerleading developed alongside the growing popularity of cheerleading in popular culture. Radical cheerleading has been a movement open to all participants, may be male, female, transgender, non-binary, or non-gender identified. And these radical cheerleaders suffered gender norms through costuming and aesthetic. And the third one is squatting. Squatting is an action of occupying an abandoned or unoccupied area of land or a building. Usually a residential that the squatter does not own, rent, or otherwise have lawful permission to use. Squatting can be related to political movements such as an anarchist, autonomist, or socialist. It can be means to conserve building or protest action. Okay, next slide. And this is the photo of squatting on the first one on the left, and the second one is the radical cheerleading. Yes. Next. Okay. Dutch sociologist Hans Pruijt separates the types of squatter into 5 distinct categories. Okay, the first one is deprivation based, that homeless people squatting for house need. Second one is an alternative housing strategy, that people unprepared to wait on municipal list to be housed to take direct action. And the third one is entrepreneurial reason, that people breaking into building to service the need of community for cheap bars or club, etc. And the fourth one is conservational reason, that preserving the monuments because the authorities have let them decay. And the last one is political reason, as the activists squatting building as protest or to make a social centers. Thanks. And thank you. That's it from us. If there is mistakes, sorry for the inconvenience. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.